everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia, and I will be your host. And my guests today are Raffi and Joe. Hello, Raffi and Joe. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are
Doing
you?
Great. How are you?
Good, good, good. So before we get started, we are going to talk about you and your company and all that kind of good stuff. So here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put your website up here and how somebody can get in touch with you guys, right? That's right there. And we're going to ask some questions about you. So why don't we kick it off with what about your backgrounds? Who wants to start with that?
I'll kick it off. So Joe Luna, co-founder of Volnera. My background's 25 odd years in InfoSec. First 15 years or so was operations to executive. Spent a lot of time with adversarial testing, had an adversarial mindset. Spent a lot of time in network service provider environments, so protecting, large sensitive networks and consumer networks that are basically helping the internet function. The last 10 years or so, I've done quite a bit of consulting, and then teamed up with Raffi several years ago to focus on solving some industry challenges. And that's what we do with Volnera. I sit on a number of advisory boards from industry startups in security, cryptocurrency, academia, and run a red team for collegiate cyber defense competition.
Wow, that's impressive. And Raffi, what about you?
Thank you. So Raffi Erganian, also a co-founder here at Volnera, about 15 years in the technology, cybersecurity, software development space. I started over at Boeing on the defense contractor side, where we did capabilities development for internal research and development groups. From there, I pivoted to the private industry, where I was a principal consultant at Accuvant and Optiv for a number of years, delivering projects for their Fortune 10, 500 customers across practically every vertical and industry. And my background is primarily in software engineering and offensive security testing.
Wow. You two are very impressive, I will tell you that. Congratulations on all your accomplishments. So our first question I'm going to ask you guys is, how has managing vulnerabilities changed for your customers?
So it seems like there's just simply more overhead for our customers. Even with all the new cybersecurity tooling, the same challenges are still in place. There's no shortage of vulnerabilities with new issues being published every day. Vulnerability numbers, the sheer count increases year over year. That leads to issues with prioritization due to the high number, the volume of vulnerabilities without the right context. Trying to identify a roadmap to remediation is oftentimes chaotic for most organizations. Mm-hmm. And the cybersecurity skills gap hasn't really helped that much either. With companies having an increased awareness on cybersecurity, the lack of skilled resources in the industry, even when customers want to tackle vulnerability management, they're faced with a resource shortage. And then we combine all of that with a fragmented buyer's marketplace where there's simply too many solutions and too many categories where organizations are buying technology instead of an outcome.
That is very well said. Go ahead, keep going.
Oh, no, that was all.
All right, so this is the next good question. So how does Volnera Solutions approach these challenges differently? That was a lot of challenges. So how are you guys handling these things differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So having been practitioners in our industry, we're familiar with a number of the pain points that our customers typically face. And we boil it down to really two things: prioritization and remediation validation. You have to know what issues need to fix in what order in order to get the best ROI for risk reduction. And you need to close the feedback loop and know what issues were actually fixed. And we do both of those things. So we go beyond vulnerability scanning. We have prioritized roadmaps with real metrics and KPIs that matter, and we can explain why they matter. It's not just a number. And then we close the feedback loop with remediation validation. We actually tell you when something was fixed and why it was fixed, whether something was patched, whether a host was taken offline. So you actually get that confirmation and the checkbox of this issue was truly resolved. It's not just hanging out in the ether.
So you guys are full service.
Absolutely.
All right. That's fantastic. I think that's what people want to hear nowadays, not just, well, you got to go see this guy for that and this guy for that. You guys handle everything. So, all right. So another question I have is, what results have your customers seen, Volnera customers seen?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I think speaking on customers' behalf, I think universally they would say they spend less time searching for the data that they need to remediate vulnerabilities, less time compiling the data, making the machine run, and actually focus on remediating issues. addressing the challenges that the industry has with vulnerability management and tooling that Raffi previously mentioned. When we take that heavy lifting, that burden away from the customer, and essentially give them the data that they need to succeed, and that is where are the vulnerabilities, and also in a prioritized ranked remediation list, so they can perform that remediation, and they just get to the work that needs to be done. So they're seeing improvements with risk being reduced across the organization because they're focusing on those high impact issues that need to be cleaned up.
Vulnerabilities remediated. Businesses today face a number of cybersecurity challenges, from compliance requirements and third-party risk to skilled resource shortages, ransomware, and alert fatigue. At Vulnera, we recognize these challenges and offer solutions to do the heavy lifting. Vulnera empowers organizations with security solutions that perform continuous asset discovery, vulnerability assessments, and remediation validation in a single pane of glass, so your team can focus precious time on what matters: remediation. Vulnera.com. Vulnerabilities remediated.
Yeah, that's very, very good. And that's the important thing now is there's so much to do. You got to get that off somebody else's plate so that they can focus on what they need to focus on. So
absolutely. Can't spend, a week and a half just selecting a tool, configuring a tool, running the tool, extracting the results, just to go back to square one to get a list of, okay, this is what I need to fix. We give that to you, you go fix it. And then, like Raffi said, we close the loop, let you know everything's good.
Yeah, to add, in terms of closing the loop, we actually provide the KPIs that you need to communicate the ROI to your stakeholders. How long does something take us to fix on average? If it's a critical issue, if it's a medium severity issue, how many issues were fixed last month? What was our top remediation action? Are we patching? We actually answer these questions without the customer having to do any lifting.
That's excellent, especially when you're trying to put dollars on this to figure out what is this saving us, what is this costing us, that whole kind of thing. So that's excellent information that the non-technical people can understand, right?
Mm-hmm. It's all about removing the overhead, doing the heavy lifting, like Joe said.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, is there anything else you guys want to throw out there about your company, where you're located, what kind of clients you're looking for, anything like that? Not to put you on the spot here, but anything?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take that. We're located in Southern California. We're both SoCal natives, so we're familiar with the area, know the community. We help a lot of local organizations as far as customers and partners, etc. It's a great question. We get asked that just like everybody else in the industry. And my response is, well, if you have a computer, it's 2022, you probably have something sensitive, relating to your business. And there's probably some regulation or some incentive that you don't want that information lost, stolen, leaked, etc. So nowadays, really everybody needs security. So we see clients from oil and gas to marketing to just everything.
Mm-hmm. And I think over the next few years, it's really going to explode. The more awareness that people have of how serious this is, that we need to be taking this. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for all your input on your good luck with you guys. And you're obviously, like I said, extremely intelligent. So now we're going to hop into our topic of the day. So today we're going to talk about vulnerability management, remediation, validation. A mouthful. Okay. So our first question is, how do I know what devices are accessing my network?
That is a great question, and we could probably write a book on it. But let's see. Truthfully, the line between corporate networks and what a trusted network device is has been blurred over the years due to a number of things that have changed. The bring your own device movement, the work from home movement we've seen with COVID, cloud adoption, and organizations spinning up environments up and down in AWS and Google Cloud. So it's rather common for the modern network to have devices, assets coming online and going offline on an everyday basis as users spin up containers, reboot appliances, people hop on and off VPNs, devices going on and off wireless, etc. to answer the question, there's really two ways that you can go about discovering devices in your environment. One is white box assessments, and the other is black box. And really all it means is in one scenario, in a white box scenario, you basically have an agent or something that's deployed, installed across your infrastructure in your environment. There's something actually you've put in there that goes and monitors every node and checks into a dashboard. And that is effectively a white box approach. With a black box approach, you have zero knowledge of the environment, and you leverage a solution that performs discovery across your computing environments. So for example, a solution would perform discovery across your cloud infrastructure, your external assets, and it would identify any rogue devices on your network, or any devices that might be missing agents if you're doing both white box and black box approach. And a black box discovery is typically standard for technical security assessments.
Okay, and this is a very important question because you have to know the answer to this in order to really start protecting things, right? If you don't know who's on the network. All right, so the next one, how do I monitor my internal, external, and cloud environments?
Well, with our solution for internal and internal cloud, we provide appliances that are deployed within the target environment or the customer environment that we're monitoring. As long as the appliance can see the destination, whether it's local or across a VPN, a private link, if we can see it, we can assess it. We can look at the network. We could perform the discovery and the probes that Raffi mentioned previously. So that gives us an internal presence, an internal point of view. For external testing, that's done across the internet, just as an attacker would probe the environment across the network. Going back to the goal of vulnerability management and remediation, we want to find those issues before the attackers do. So we put ourselves in attackers' shoes and we follow the same paths that attackers would, and they're coming across the internet. So we run the assessments and regular continuous testing via the internet to encounter the same protective mechanisms that may be in place to protect the network. Because it's beyond just identifying vulnerabilities. You also want to point out strengths that the organization has, proactive security measures. And if our scans are tripped up, interfered with, or anything, we're not finding vulnerabilities, but we can say, hey, your IDS, your IPS is also working great, by the way. So it's a life cycle of checking controls back and forth across the board.
I think that's really good that you mentioned to them what's working properly too, because it's like everybody's like, oh, what are you going to say now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So much time and effort is spent, especially in security, telling everybody what they've done wrong. Mm-hmm. You're not patching. You have a bad policy. This isn't right. That's not right. I mean, we're just kind of beat down day after day after day with issues. And we like to show the positive aspects, the progress that an organization is making.
Definitely. And I think that's what deters some companies from getting started, because they say, we don't even know where to start. We know we're going to be bad at it. It's too complicated. And then we know it's going to be all these bad things that are going to throw it. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. So
absolutely.
Let's focus on the positive. Good. All right. So our next one, when should I do vulnerability assessment versus pen test? This is a good question.
Yeah, we get this a lot, and it's a surprisingly easy answer. We ask, are you trying to validate the effectiveness of security controls that you have, or are you trying to understand where your issues are so you can fix them? And that's really the difference. A penetration test builds on a vulnerability assessment. It's a manual effort where the security vulnerabilities that are identified during the vulnerability assessment are actively exploited. The vulnerability assessment gives you an opportunity to identify the areas of risk and remediate issues prior to conducting a penetration test. After the fixes have been made, the penetration test validates the effectiveness of the security controls you have in place, including any compensating controls. For example, next-gen firewalls, next-gen antivirus that exists on hosts these days. A penetration test validates those, whereas a vulnerability assessment just identifies where your gaps are so you can resolve them. Most organizations should absolutely be starting with a vulnerability assessment and then slowly moving on to a pen test after they've remediated their high severity issues.
This is really good that you're pointing this out, because I don't think I've discussed this at all on any of my videos. And I think people may think it's the same thing if you didn't explain it the way you just did, right? So
Yeah.
you did a very good job of explaining that in very layman's terms. So that was, go ahead.
I want to add, in fact, we have a lot of customers coming to us saying they need a penetration test, and we talk them down to a vulnerability assessment, because there's no point in getting a penetration test if you've never done a vulnerability assessment before. It's just, it's like trying to run in the Olympics when you've never trained.
Right.
Yeah. And if all else fails and the folks listening and watching forget penetration test, before you take a test, you always have to study. You don't walk into a test blind. So, that's the cherry on top. That's the top of the mountain. Like Raffi said, you want to validate your controls. The test, you're going to be tested. The vulnerability assessment's your time to shine and take those proactive measures and reduce risks and vulnerabilities.
There you go. Study before you take a test, so the pen test comes at the end. All right. So our next question is, how often should I be assessing my network?
So that really depends on the organization, the regulation that it might be facing, its risk tolerance. There's many things that contribute to how often you should be assessing the network. We've seen the industry shift from quarterly to monthly to weekly to daily in terms of performing testing. We go further, we go beyond that. We could test environments truly continuously, so multiple times a day. So I think it really depends what's right for the organization. Beyond that, another thing that somebody had mentioned one time, and it always stuck with me: how often do you run antivirus? All the time. You always run antivirus, because you never know what's going to fly, what you're going to download, what you're going to click on, what's on your system. It's always there. You wouldn't run antivirus once a month to look for viruses. So why not apply that same methodology of as close to continuous or as frequently as possible, while not introducing obviously any instabilities to the environment or setting off, excessive alarms or anything like that. The more you can do it, the better off you will be.
That's a good way to put it. If you're going to have, antivirus on all the time, why not do this? Not all the time, but as much as you possibly can. That's a good point. I think a lot of people probably just set it and forget it with this. And then, we have antivirus, so we're good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That might not be the solution to the. All right. Our next question is, what can I do to ensure the actions I've taken have solved the problem?
So we have a couple of ways that we help organizations ensure that they're solving problems. We have a remediation validation option, which is basically 60 to 90 days, where we come in, we deploy the sensors. We're doing regular continuous testing. We're providing feedback and reporting to the customer with a constant state of vulnerabilities in the environment. That's their opportunity to review that list and go out and make some headway in reducing that. As far as ensuring that the actions are effective, all they have to do during that time is, really go to the dashboard. And it sounds so cliche. It's so funny to say, go to the dashboard and you'll see it. But with the solution we have, we present everything for you to consume. We do all the heavy lifting, like we mentioned before. We're doing all of the testing regularly. We're crunching the data. We're assigning rankings and prioritizing everything. You really just have to look, say, I want to fix the top item on my remediation plan. Go fix it, come back. Ideally, one or multiple passes of the environment have passed in the interim, and it just magically goes from an open item to a closed item. And we also provide more context as to why the issue was remediated. Did the host disappear? Is the service gone? Was it truly patched? What happened to that vulnerability beyond just saying that it's gone?
That's very good. And the dashboard, everybody, maybe that's a good thing to have, is the dashboard. It is. It's like, well, let me just take a look, right? And the business owner can take a look and see what's going on whenever they're curious about something. So I think the dashboard's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, we're at the end now. Do you guys have anything else you want to throw out there? It's okay if you don't.
No, just thank you for having us. We enjoy watching videos on your channel. We like the conversations that you have with everybody. And I think you're doing a great job getting the word out there, you know, the importance of security and how to successfully navigate, you know, the CMMC and governance landscape. So thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And the goal, you're welcome. And the goal is to introduce the world to people like you that can help them with these things. That's what we're trying to do. You know, it takes a village here. So we all have to help everybody get the name of everything out there. So thank you very much for that. And with that, we will see you guys on the next episode. And thank you very much for listening. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.